We'll call the meeting to order and open with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First, I'd like to thank everybody for coming to the meeting tonight. This is the October 2nd, 2024 hearing of the Planning and Zoning Commission. If you address the commission during the meeting, we ask you step forward and use the microphone, please. Roll call.
Mr. Boggs.
Here.
Mr. Bush.
Here.
Mr. Breuering.
Here.
Mr. Messina.
Here.
Ms. Rogers. Mr. Smiley. Mr. Sherlax.
Here.
Okay, thank you. We do have a quorum. So let's move right on into the agenda. We have no old business on the agenda tonight. Going to new business, item A, rezoning application Z124-005.
So the location of this is at 7730 and 7661 Columbia Road Southwest. They're requesting a recommendation of approval to rezone two properties totaling about 63.59 acres from AG Agricultural to PM Plan Manufacturing with a planned district overlay pursuant to sections 1217.10 and 1261.06 of the Pataskala Code. So if you take a look up here, the parcels outlined in yellow are the subject parcels. You got the larger one here with the smaller one in the house right here. So you got Columbia Road to the east and the Parkway to the west. So again, the properties, there's two of them, just about 63.59 acres. The 5-acre one's used for residential and agricultural uses, and the remaining acreage is purely agricultural. Proposal is they're requesting a rezoning from AG to Plan Manufacturing with the additional adoption of a planned district overlay pursuant to section 1261.06 of the Pataskala Code. The planned overlay district works in conjunction with the base zone and may apply additional requirements or allow exemptions from general regulations. Here's the site plan that was submitted by the applicant. So north would be up here. There's going to be no access to or from Columbia Road here. You can see their setbacks and their setbacks from adjacent residential uses indicated here. So the planned overlay district access for their development text, this is what they had in it. The access, there's going to be no access to or from Columbia Road Southwest. Primary access is to be through the north, the existing PM zoning to the north on the adjacent parcels, and then to Etna Parkway through an access easement. They could be accessed to another artillery collector through adjacent properties, but no access to or from Columbia Road Southwest or to any rural road. So again, here's the parcel outlined in yellow. Up to the north, you have the existing PM zoning, and then there's an existing access easement to Etna Parkway right here. No access to Columbia Road. For the division of property, they say that each lot condo must meet the minimum area and width requirements of the PM district. Required setbacks shall apply on each lot or condominium. The required setbacks for residential uses and districts shall apply on each lot or condominium, even if such lot or condominium is not adjacent to a residential use or district. The required side and rear setbacks on a condominium that does not abut a public right-of-way shall apply to side and rear lines of such condominium. The division of property, the max percentage of lot area which may be occupied by structures shall be 65%. That's based on the total area of the property, not each individual lot. And for plan review and approval at the time of development, the applicant shall submit a plan manufacturing application to the Planning and Zoning Department, which will come to Planning and Zoning Commission. Then you'll make a recommendation to City Council, and ultimately City Council will have the approval authority on that. That's the same normal process for our standard plan manufacturing applications. They did include the concept plan that we saw earlier that shows properties proposed to be rezoned, as well as the setbacks and buffer areas. And again, no access to or from Columbia Road for any planned manufacturing uses. In their narrative statement, the applicant stated that the subject properties, in addition to the properties to the northwest and south, are within the Pataskala Corporate Park and the CRA area. And the applicant does believe that future development would not be hazardous or disturbing to future uses, as large setbacks were required and buffers would screen from adjacent residential uses, as well as being no access to Columbia Road. They also say that the comprehensive plan recommends flex industrial for these properties. Part of our review, staff would offer the following comments. The future land use map recommends flex industrial. The request would be in line with the recommendations of the comprehensive plan. The properties are already within the Pataskala Corporate Park area and the CRA agreement. Proposed development text is actually identical to the previously approved rezoning to planned manufacturing from agricultural for the properties that are about 136 acres to the north. You guys saw that in March of this year, and then City Council approved it, which became effective in July. Following a recommendation from Planning and Zoning Commission, the application will go before City Council. The Public Service Department stated, just reiterated that there's going to be no access to Columbia Road permitted. Southwest Looking said that they included a letter from themselves to the applicant as part of the applicant's submittal there. So there's a letter from Southwest Looking in there, and didn't receive any other comments from any other departments or agencies. Surrounding properties to the north is planned manufacturing, which is currently used for agriculture. To the east is agricultural, which is currently used for agricultural uses in single-family homes. To the south is zoned ag and planned manufacturing, which is currently used for agricultural. And to the west is planned manufacturing, which is a future warehouse development. So should the Planning and Zoning Commission choose to recommend approval, the following modifications may be considered: that they provide a clean copy of the complete application to go before City Council. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Good. Thank you, Jack. Questions from the commission? Frank?
So I noticed there's kind of a property that was kind of surrounded by this application. What's the current use for that?
Oh, sorry, what was that?
So
Current
there-
use?
Yeah, there was a, yeah, what's the
Be
use?
residential.
It's residential.
Yes, there's a smaller property here on Columbia Road that this property encompasses.
And there's a house on it as well, or it's just zoned?
There's a house on
There's
it.
a house on there, okay. And is the property to the north, is that the same owner as this application, do you know?
It is not.
The
no.
different owner, okay. Do you have a sense of what screening or buffering would be required?
Just whatever's required by Pataskala code for plant manufacturing.
Okay.
So
And that's based upon the height of the building, and so there's various options depending on, essentially, if it gets closer, the screening goes up. If it moves back, the screening goes down. But there is a minimum in terms of the screening requirements. It's just based upon what would go there in the future. And all that would be as part of their, should this develop in the future, that's all part of the package that comes with planning and zoning and then ultimately council.
Okay, correct. Got it. And then last question for now. Are these properties going to be combined into one, I guess, property instead of two separate zoning districts, or would they still remain two separate? Which is the same?
for the time being, as it develops, they could subdivide it as long as it meets the minimum requirements.
But I mean, for this one, is this going to be, if it gets approved, will it be one property with the plant manufacturing, or will it still remain two separate plant manufacturing properties with a 5 acre and then the 56
I believe it would remain separate.
separate? Okay. Okay, that's all I have for right now.
Thank you. Jim?
A couple questions. Couldn't really tell on the map here. He said there's no access to Columbia, so this is going to be a single access to Etna Parkway. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Has the applicant done anything with the traffic study yet then?
Not at this time, no.
Okay. The last question I have said there's sewer improvements currently underway. Do you know how that's going to fall with the timeline of the potentially development there? Are we going to be developing this ahead of the sewer?
So there's no development on the site proposed now. They're just rezoning it. If there is going to be any development, it'll have to come back before Planning Commission and ultimately City Council for, whatever they do end up doing.
Gotcha. Okay, that's all.
Thank you. David?
And the property could remain for agricultural use for as long as they desire to do that until they determine if they're going to develop it into something else.
Correct.
That's all.
Those are- Thanks. Jerry?
Just kind of walk through so everybody understands when and if something came about and it was manufacturing, would there be any opportunity then to discuss with the builder, to protect some of the residential, since it is kind of moving? I understand it's right up against the industrial part, but it's moving right up against. Is there opportunity to discuss with the applicant then at that time to make sure that there's plenty of buffering for the residential people around?
Yeah,
Okay.
be able to bring that up at that point.
Just wanted to get that out there. So
Yeah,
thank you.
that procedurally, it kind of simplified. All we're doing tonight is considering changing the color on the map, just for simplicity's sake. Should it develop in the future, that's when we look at the site plan, buffering, parking, lighting, all those things, and it goes through that. So until there's a builder, that happens in the future, but tonight it's just changing the color on the map.
Just verifying that. Thank you very much. No more questions, sir.
Okay, thank you. I have a couple questions, but I'll wait until after we have the presentation. So next we'll go to the applicant,
Sure,
Connie Kalima,
thank you.
and Lisa will swear you in.
Swear from the testimony about the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do, thank you. I'm Connie Klima, P.O. Box 991, Pataskala, Ohio, and I represent the owners of both parcels. All your questions are good, and I'm going to try to frame it in a little better for you. As Jack was saying, this is in the area of the corporate park. It's in the comprehensive plan to be this type of zoning, and it is also in the CRA. So this property is, all of these properties in this area have been planned potentially to be this use. Yes, the current owners have no immediate plans to do anything except to continue living there and farming. One of the biggest questions that I think came up, and Jack, maybe you can help me with this, if you put up the one that shows the site plan, if I can just give you an idea, if you can see this property and the people that are here, I'm assuming are neighbors or so, just to give you an idea, on this property and what your code requires, and I think you basically put through to make sure there was some safeties, is that when there's a residential use, you can't just plant a planned district building there. So just to give you an idea, what this does is to show you that if there's a house, for instance, here, you would have to go 350 feet on this property before you could develop anything. You'd have to go 250 feet before you could have a parking area. Just to give you an idea from the aerial, you asked about this, which is a residential area. If anybody came in now to develop in this particular area, a building couldn't be any closer than back here behind the woods, 350 feet away from that property line. So, and then in addition to that, there's buffering, not only setbacks, but buffers as far as height and mounding trees, more trees, et cetera. So your code does a pretty good thing about that. And regarding to the access, it's been planned, and there was a recorded easement that takes the access point on Corporate Drive, has been planned already through traffic designs that there would be different properties on Columbia, since they can't go on to Columbia with planned district uses. They would have to use alternative means to get to there. So, and as Scott and Jack said, not until a planned a builder came in with some type of a design with all of those routes and everything be looked at, and then basically ultimately decided. So I don't know if I've addressed every question, but your new code makes it pretty easy to feel at least like you've got enough protections in there for that type of thing. So I'm sure I may have to answer some questions, so I'll wait.
Great, thank you. I'll start.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I believe I heard you say that there is a recorded easement across the.
Yeah, in fact, it's on, if
adjacent
you look
property.
in the text, I have provided it on the second page. It's in an ordinance from the city. It says the area shown as a proposed 60-foot access utility easement on Exhibit D, which is incorporated, shall be platted as a reserved, non-exclusive, non-public easement, providing future cross-shared access to, by, between, and for the benefit of future industrial, non-residential development parcels along Columbia Road. So the whole idea, Mr. Boggs, was that people that have properties on what would be the east side of the parkway that are in the park do not use Columbia, but work together for access routes to go out to that one access point.
I understand about the no access to Columbia. I wasn't sure about the cross properties.
Yeah, that would
Of all
have to
the-
actually be gained, like, for instance, if I came in and wanted to develop the Osborne property, and I would have to go to the Robinson Family Farm owners and basically negotiate an easement to get to that.
Okay.
Mhm.
And I think the expectation would be if it were, whenever it would develop, that there would be interior streets or driveways to allow that traffic to get out
Correct,
at the
correct,
parkway, so.
yes.
Okay, Tim, anything for
No
comment?
questions?
David?
I have none.
Jerry?
None at this moment, no, sir.
This question maybe more for staff, but you mentioned the 350-foot buffer for residential. Does that also apply to, because I think there's some farmland over there, does it also apply to agricultural?
Not to farmland, but to an actual residential use.
It would have to be residential.
It doesn't matter, it's not based on a district, it's based on use.
Okay.
So even though it's zoned ag.
Right.
And not residential, if there's a house there or somebody residing there, you have to do. Mike, that's correct, isn't it?
It's based upon either a residential zone. So for example, if the property to the south was zoned agricultural, that counts as residential. Or even if something, say, is zoned business, but there's a house there, that counts as residential. So it's residential use or district is where
Okay.
these
It's a
setbacks
catch-all.
apply.
Got it. All right, thank you. That's all.
Any other questions at this time? No? Thank you. We do have 2 speaker request forms tonight, and again, Lisa will swear you in and then start with your name and address. Cindy Warner, 7866 Columbia Road.
Do you swear or affirm testimony about the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Hi, I'm Cindy Warner. I live at 7866 Columbia Road Southwest. You've answered a lot of questions, but I do still have a few. We've been neighbors with the Osbornes for about 30 years, and I can leave you a list of what I'm asking anyway. I admit that the information in the zoning application and the zoning ordinance are a bit confusing to me when you refer to other code sections, and that kind of confuses me. That's why I have questions. And some of the areas in the zoning code, I see setbacks of only 50 feet. I know they were talking about a 350-foot building setback and a 250-foot parking setback. However, there are areas in the planning and zoning commission that says may consider certain criteria for approval. So does that mean that those setbacks are in this application, or does it have to wait until there is like developers? I'm not sure how that works. And can setbacks be changed as part of a general zoning code and update in the future? I don't know how that works either. You answered buffering and landscaping, because we are right next to it. I think we're on the 5-acre, we're next to that, close to the house. But the part that's the rest of it, it's still along our property line, but it's behind our house and buildings. And plus we have a couple of acres of woods in the back, which they don't want to butt to anyway, so that doesn't matter on that part. Yeah, there were items listed that I was concerned with. Number 6, I think it's on page 4 of the application, regarding traffic noise, smoke, fumes, water pollution, and especially water, because that to me means contamination to our well or some sort. I'm just asking that when there is proposed development that these are in place, these provisions. And, okay, if there's any modification to this application, will we be notified of that, of modifications? Or is this how it is? I mean, I don't know if you can modify it or not. I just thought I'd ask. And will we be notified of any proposed developments before they happen, or? And the last thing is, will we have an opportunity to address concerns with development plans in the future? Thank you. Would you like me to leave this? Just,
Yeah, if you can give a copy to Lisa.
We want to have one question for her.
Okay, sure.
Ma'am? Ma'am? I did have one question. So do you have city water or are you on a well?
we're on a well.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, the other speaker request was from Charles Wharton, 7845 Columbia Road.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes. Hi. First, I want to say, when you're sitting back here, we can't hear what you guys are saying. We see your mouth moving, but that's it.
Okay.
So many of
Thank
the
you.
questions I think were answered, and Cindy asked a couple of questions. But I live at 7845 Columbia Road, and if you look at the bottom right corner of that, it looks like a long driveway that goes back. That's our property. And so it's right across the street from the proposed, yeah, right there. Right across the street from the proposed change. You asked a question about well or city. As you know, there's no city water down that road, so everybody is on a well. So any wells drilled would possibly impact all of the houses on this road for water. The other thing I was interested in, and many of the questions were answered already, but there's no access proposed from Columbia Road to this proposed zoning area. And there wasn't any, or at the present time, any planned development plans out there right now for this property. Is that correct?
That's correct. The first step would be to rezone it. So essentially, for simplicity's sake, they're just changing the color on the map.
Mhm.
So if this were to go through and be approved, nothing would change, just the color on the map. Should a developer come in at some point and say, I wish to develop this, this goes through the process again where everybody's notified, and then it comes to the planning commission, and they make a recommendation to council, and again, council has a public hearing and everybody is notified. So until there's something going there, we don't know kind of some of the screening or how it's gonna be laid out. We're just changing the color of the map in this hearing this evening.
Yeah. Well, once colors are changed, it goes a long way. But since it's going to be planned manufacturing, could condominiums go in there?
No.
And the height of the buildings you were talking about, depending on how close they are, or?
It's so the maximum per code that a building can be in this district is 50 feet. So the way the buffering is laid out and is, you could go the minimum setback allowed by code, but the mounting gets higher. You can move it back and then the mounting can go lower, but there's a minimum mounting requirement. It could never be none. So it's fluctuation in terms of it gets closer, mounting's taller, it moves back, mounting can be reduced, but there's a minimum in terms of what that mounting can be. But it's all based upon the building as they develop and how they lay that out.
Okay. So in addition, there's no change in the taxes on these properties on Columbia?
I'm not with the auditor's office, but seeing as there's no development to the property, it's still agriculture and residential, I'm assuming everything would stay the same. They don't look at zoning, they look at the land.
Okay. So do you know if there's any planned water access down that road, city water down the road?
That would be through the water and sewer district, so I can't speak to that because it's not the Pataskala utility.
Okay, well, like I said, many of the questions were answered, although it was really hard to hear when you were speaking, but I do appreciate the time to ask some questions and get some answers. As you know, everybody that lives on that road is concerned what's going to happen. Are we going to have a manufacturer that's running 24 hours a day and semi trucks are all over the place? So that was my biggest concern, just asking some general questions and concerned about having access to water if somebody starts drilling wells, and since there's no city water on that property, on our Columbia Road.
So there will be water that comes down Etna Parkway, so likely anything that develops will be hooked up to central utilities, the central water and sewer. There are some provisions in the code that could allow for wells, but it's highly discouraged, especially since all that's gonna be there. So that would be at the discretion of council, but I don't see them approving it if the utilities are readily available.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so you want to address any of the
Yeah, I
concerns?
just want to, just add some things and I appreciate the questions. When you had asked about condominiums, Scott said no, what he's referring to is no residential condominiums.
Right, yeah.
Correct. So, in commercial development, as you probably know, you can condominiumize, in a sense, airspace, instead of having a lot, you divide it by a condominium document, meaning how it's going to be maintained.
Well, I'm at residential.
Yeah, no residential condominiums. And in addition, utilities, Southwest Licking has plans, as Scott said. Anybody that would come here to use it for any type of use like this would be seeking public utilities. And this, what I always call like the spine road, which is Corporate Parkway, is where all of that would be coming from. So a development of this property wouldn't be a quick thing, because you're gonna have to negotiate to get access out onto the easement area, and you're gonna have to wait for utilities. But all of that would be done when that developer comes in and puts the plan together and goes through all this.
But there's no plans right now, right?
No. Not to my knowledge. Any other questions?
I guess just to clarify, one of the questions that Ms. Warner brought up, modifications to the application, I mean.
I don't
what
have
we
any
see-
modifications to this.
Yeah, I mean, what we see today is what
Is-
we would be recommending.
Correct.
For council.
Yeah, I'm not planning on changing it, no.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the commission members for either? I guess I should have asked too, are there any other comments from the public besides those two? Okay, if you'd step forward, same thing. Lisa will swear you in and then start with your name and address.
I swear the testimony you give to truth and the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so you got it.
Yes. Just a quick question. One of the properties in question
Name and
was,
address, please.
oh, my name is David Myers. I live at 7661 Columbia Road.
Okay.
I'm curious, one of the properties is 7661 and I'm across the street, so I'm just curious. It seems like our address is on there. So
Yeah, and I can explain
Okay,
that.
that's all my question.
The Osborne said to me, when the Osbornes got this split or something, when they split out, the auditor has, their property is 7661 and also somebody else's. So that's why it's there and the auditor needs to correct it. But the address is correct. The parcel numbers are the what you rely on, so.
So you're not not proposing to rezone?
You're not
it?
rezoning this property.
I could see where that would be a
That would be
concern.
very confusing.
Anything else? Okay, if not, deliberation time. Anybody have any discussion, comments on the application?
Just some of the concerns that I heard, we can kind of talk through those maybe if that's okay. There was Ms. Warner had some questions about the 50-foot versus the 250-foot and 350-foot buffering. I'm assuming that refers to whether it's a residential use versus, non-residential use. Would that be what that could be referring to? I guess you're not looking at the code, but.
Yeah, without looking at the code, it's tough, but that's based upon, if you abut for example, Columbia Road, that has the most restrictive screening and setback requirements. So, and again, it's hard to say because it's all dependent upon what the plan is when they go to develop. So those have the most restrictive along Columbia Road.
Okay. But I think to address the question, I think maybe that's the concern is with the residential, if I'm understanding that correctly. And so that would be the 250 for the parking and the 350 for residential. So I want to clarify that. Let's see here. There are questions about modifications. If there was any modifications, would they get notified? And then also notification of development. I believe the answer is yes on both of those. I think
Correct.
We can't change it once it's been approved. It'd have to go back to council or to the zoning commission.
Yep. So what you guys recommend tonight is what council will get. If they make any changes at that point, they'll come back to
Right.
Planning and Zoning
Right.
Commission, have another hearing, be notified, as well as any future development will have to go through that same process. Notifications will go out. There'll be a hearing about it.
I have some questions about can the code change? I think that's probably more referring to the next phase here.
So, yes, I mean, arguably in simple terms, the code can change. I will say that the plan manufacturing code that would be the governing document for this property, that started to be updated in December of 22 and went through about a 6 months workshop with the development committee, which, as you know, is comprised of 3 members of council. And then that was updated in 2023. So it is brand new. I do not see, aside from minor tweaks here or there, I do not see that going away. And that went from 4 pages to 14 pages of regulations to make it much more thorough and comprehensive in terms of when something does come in. It's more thoroughly reviewed, but I do not foresee this section of code changing.
Okay. And I heard some questions about contamination or pollution. I think that's really probably addressed in the next phase. And I know we have some contingencies in place for that.
That's correct.
For requirements. Then wells, I think we kind of talked about that a little bit as far as more than likely. And I think that would be, if they're looking at putting a well on there, I would be not in favor of that. So I think I would definitely want the public water that are coming in. But again, that's the next phase there. I think that's all I had for the comments that needed to be addressed there. So.
Okay, thanks. Any other discussion?
I think the last thing they had too was, I believe, notification. And can you kind of explain what happens if something does come, how they get notified and everything?
Yeah, so we have to send notification out to any property owner within 300 feet of the subject property. It's also posted in the newspaper and on the city's website a week prior to the hearing.
Thank you.
And one point that I know you brought up in the presentation, the staff report, was just to reiterate this, what's proposed on this property is the same thing that we approved for the Robinson property immediately north back in March of this year. So, and those, all the parameters are identical. That's my understanding, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Anything else? Are we ready to take an action on the plan or the application, I mean?
Feel all right? You ready?
I'm ready.
I recommend approval of rezoning application number ZON-24-005 pursuant to section 1217.10 with a plan district the plan district overlay pursuant to section 1261.06 of the Pataskala Code with one modification. The applicant shall provide a clean copy of the complete application to Planning and Zoning Department prior to proceeding to City Council.
Thank you. Motion on the table to approve the application with one modification. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Tim. Discussion on the application, or on the motion to approve? Roll call.
Mr. Bush,
Yes.
Mr. Mancino,
Yes.
Mr. Burring,
Yes.
Mr. Truax,
Yes.
Mr. Botts.
Yes. Motion passes. Thank you. We'll see you again, I'm sure, on this.
Yes.
Now, as always say, we have additional items on the agenda. You're welcome to stay, and it's really exciting. Good things. But we'll give you a few minutes if you want to.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Well.
Okay, other business on the agenda. Item A, Pataskala sanitary sewer capacity discussion. Chris?
Thank you, sir. I wanted to introduce myself to the commission a little bit. I'm Chris Schrock, I'm the Assistant City Administrator. Before I got this role, I was the Utility Director. And I've been in the utility industry from 2004 to 2023 when I moved up to the office building. So as we got all this development coming in, I believe some people are aware that the sewer plant capacity to treat the sewer flows coming to us is very limited. We are in the design process to expand that plant. We've already got our permit approved through the EPA. We're in the design phase now. The plan is to bid that project out to construction late in 2026, and construction should be complete between January and June of 2028. They said January in the plans, but anybody that's ever dug anything knows that once you put a shovel in the ground, the plans go out the window. So we're really kind of thinking June of 2028. So that's a little ways off. And so what we wanted to do was go through and look at our flows coming into the wastewater plant and see what capacity we had available and how that would relate to the things that this commission is looking at as they come into for approvals. I do want to stress that this is for Pataskala's service area only, not Southwest Lickings. So we're looking basically east of Columbia is kind of what we're talking about. So I'm just going to go through the chart that's up on the screen there. I'm trying to explain some of these numbers. All the numbers are in million gallons per day. That is the standard unit that we use in the sewer industry. 1987, the plant was upgraded to 1.1 million gallons a day, and that's what we're still operating now. Currently, we use 0.95 million gallons a day for the unit, the development that we have already in place. So that leaves us 0.15 MGD available, so about 150,000 gallons a day. Forest Ridge, Scenic View, and Heron Manor, those are in process already, so I accommodated a full build out of those developments. So we took those numbers off, corresponded in that chart, which left us, after those three developments are finished, it leaves us with 0.0657 million gallons a day available. Now, some of our system, especially in Old Town, is clay sewer pipes. So every 3 feet, there's another joint between the clay pipe pieces that go through. In those joints, we get a lot of, it's called I&I water, it's rainwater, groundwater, that kind of stuff. We have to accommodate all of that at the sewer plant. Anything gets in the pipe, we've got to treat it when it gets to us. There's also a calculation standard the EPA uses based on our census numbers. They assume that there's 2.5 people in every household, and they assume that each person uses about 100 gallons a day. That's kind of a round estimate for the design purposes. But we all know that there's not always 2.5 people in a house. Sometimes you have 5, you have 8, who knows how many there'll be in there. So I took the capacity that was remaining, I took 75% of that and held it as a buffer. That's for that I&I water and for more people in the houses than we expected to come in, which leaves that yellow square, 0.0164 million gallons a day is available to still be built on. When you use the calculation that the EPA uses, which are listed there, 100 gallons a day, 2.5 people per house, so about 250 gallons per day per house. That leaves us at 65.8, so 65 single residential units, a single family home. Now, if you get a restaurant in, it's quite possible that restaurant would use the same as 5 or maybe 10 houses would. If you get an office space building, it's probably about the same as what a house would use. So there's a lot of flexibility there, but we wanted to give a kind of a number that we just want to quantify what we're seeing at the plant. So we're thinking 65 residential units are available until the middle of 2028. As properties come through the development process, at the very end of the design phase, they have to submit what's called a PTI, a permit to install, to the EPA. And at that point, if the EPA approves it, that's when we say that capacity is spoken for. Before that point, we're always a first come, first served basis, unless we legally can't be. So that's kind of the process for how it all works. What we have decided as an administration is to request from developers that come in. If your full project, not just a phase coming in, but if your full project is going to be over, at the moment, 65 residential units, or whatever that number is when they come to us, we're going to ask them to wait until 2027. So we're thinking January of 2027, they could start the rezoning process if they have to do that. Around the middle of 2027, they can submit plans for review, and then the plant will come online in the middle of July of 28. The thought process behind that was we don't want to stop all development altogether, but we just can't take a big subdivision at the moment. We just don't have the room in the plant to take it. So we can still do restaurants, office space, a single home here and there. We can do that kind of thing. We also didn't want to say, don't submit anything to the plants online, because we think what'll happen, you'll have 12 subdivisions lined up trying to get through the process all at the same time. So it felt like it was a good compromise to give the developers some time to get their paperwork side of things through the process and not have the plans get approved too early and just sit on the shelf, or have things like the traffic impact study no longer be valid by the time they actually build whatever they're trying to build. And it's good for the developers too, because if anything has to be amended on their plans because they sat on our shelves for 2 years while they couldn't build, it opens the entire thing up for another round of reviews. So if you have a utility director now who looks at it and says, this is good, I don't need a lift station improvement, or whatever they might say, 2 years from now, the developer thinking all they got to do is redo their traffic study, and that utility director looks at everything and says, I need you to build a lift station for me, or make this pipe bigger, or whatever. So we didn't want to put them in a bind. We didn't want to put us in a bind. So I pretty much just wanted to give the commission the numbers. You guys have seen a lot of stuff come through, and wanted to let you know where we stand. That's all I have. Scott, if I miss anything, please jump in. Water. We do have plenty of water. Water is not an issue for us. So we're using about half of the water that we could pump through those. We have 2 water plants. About half of what we could pump through them is what we're using now. So a large industrial or commercial user would be a problem for us. However, that's not really what's in our service area. It's all ag and residential. So I don't see the water being an issue. It's just sewer. Now, when we do expand the plant, we're going to go from 1.1 million gallons a day where we are now to 2 million gallons a day. So we're almost doubling it. So the capacity at the sewer plant will also not be an issue once we get this expansion built. Outside of that, I really don't have anything else, but I'd be happy to answer any questions anybody has.
The expansion is the same facility, or not adding a facility somewhere separate? Right?
It's the same property. We've got a pretty big property back there behind Bright Waters. We're basically it's going to be a whole new treatment process. So that plant itself will be kind of rebuilt to describe it, but it's not leaving the fence. It's not leaving the property that we already have.
Okay. I won't go around the robin, so if you have questions, just jump in.
You answered mine too, and that was capacity and location. I don't know for the rest of you. I've worked with Chris now, 3 years or so, or what have you. I appreciate what you do for our city. I just leave it at that. Thank you.
Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
Do you have a sense of when our remaining 65 units of capacity might be used up?
I don't. I know there's a coffee shop that's pretty much through the process right now, and they'll be fine. They'll fall in there, but it really just depends on how many of those come in and how quick they come in. But that's a pretty hard number.
Yeah.
We really can't take much more than that.
Sure.
Jack and Scott, how are we on, if an applicant comes in the meantime and we don't have capacity for him, how are you handling that?
So legally, if someone were to come in and say, I'm going to build a 200 house subdivision, so this is what I want to do, we would have these initial conversations and saying, here's the policy that we're looking full build out. You can't phase it because something's going to sit on the shelf, and that's going to create problems for everybody. So that'll be our initial discussions with them to say, here's the situation we're in. We would discourage them. I would not apply. If they come in with the complete application and want to move it forward, by law, I have to take that forward when we come to Planning and Zoning Commission. Let's say it's a plan district, 200 house subdivision. This would come to Planning Commission. So then it would be up for consideration for planning commission. That's why we want to kind of get ahead of this and make sure that our boards and commissions are aware that if they were to come in, you would say, we don't have that. Policy kind of internally states that, this is full build out, we're not going to phase this. Arguably, there's a recommendation that moves on to council. Council's aware of this as well, in terms of we don't have the capacity, so even if it's recommended for approval and council approves it, when it gets to that end stage where it's the PTI, then that has to go to the EPA, and then that'll come to Chris and the utility department, and they'll say, no, don't approve it, we don't have capacity. So there's a lot of different steps along the way that ultimately, until the plant is getting close to being done, that it doesn't behoove anybody to force it through the process. So ultimately, it's gonna stop, but is it worth your time and money to try and force it through these boards and commissions that are fully aware of the situation we're in? And so we're kind of saying, don't folks, but they can go through, but it's gonna be difficult to get through with a favorable recommendation or approval.
And the structure's just not there yet.
Yeah, and for example, rezonings, one of criteria number 4 of a rezoning is, will it be served by essential public facilities? So there is that.
So a decision to disapprove is grounded in the requirement.
Correct, yeah.
Good.
If I read recently where there've been some, I wouldn't say backtracking, but more openness to what you used to call them package plants or something where it's totally standalone. If somebody came in with that kind of a proposal, how would that be addressed?
So the EPA has decided that they wanted to start increasing the availability of package plants, which is basically a lift station it's a lift station with a septic tank behind it, is what it is. The catch-all is a thing called a state 208 plan, which is it's the state dividing up who serves sewer to what areas. So Pataskala service area, everything in our service area is in our 208 plan, and everything around us that's like Harrison Township, the other side of Pataskala, that's all in Southwest Licking's 208 plan. I don't believe that either entity has any desire to approve package plants within their 208 plans. And the 208 plan gives that entity the ability to say, no, you can't put that here. And that would be our stance. What we don't want is a bunch of subdivisions popping up and basically putting giant septic tanks into the ditches and the streams, and then, polluting the area. So
Didn't we have one on, was it Mink? In the Parkway, somewhere over there was an industrial building business that had a septic tank, I think, as a short term until the district could bring up their capacity.
Yeah,
Correct.
there was
Shank.
Shank, yeah,
Okay.
the Meyer Shank Racing does have a septic field because they were one of the first ones on that parkway before they got
Yeah.
utilities down.
But that was approved with that condition. That they
it
had.
was, the permission came conditional. When we get our pipe there, you gotta get rid of that and hook up to us.
For our consideration, do you have a map available for the service area for this?
I do, it's on the city website, but I'd be more than happy tomorrow, I'll just email the whole commission a copy of the map, and you can see if it's green, this problem applies. If it's orange, it doesn't. So,
That would be helpful, thank you.
yes, sir.
Any other questions or comments?
Just thank you.
Thanks for
Thank you for coming in and giving us all the information.
Okay, moving on the agenda then, 6B, Richard Houck.
So Richard, if you'd like to come up, I'll give this to you actually. So you can use the left and right arrow keys to flip between. I just put your plans up on there.
Thank you.
So
Yeah, first you need to be sworn in and
You swear the testimony about this truth, I think we should say that.
And then if you would start with your name and address, please.
Hello, my name is Richard Houck. Address is 572 East Broad Street, number 330. Thanks for letting me present this and ask you some questions. just start with a little bit about myself. I grew up here, graduated from Watkins, live here and work here. I've been a part of a lot of different projects in town with both of my parents. My dad's done a lot of development and building all through the town since he came back from Vietnam. Him and I did the build out for the Rusty's Wharf restaurant that my mom has. And then once we moved, we did the build out for that. I'm interested in some development in town if there are opportunities that work for us and work for the city. One of the projects that I'm really interested in is a parcel that's on Oak Meadow between the World of Wonderment childcare, like daycare, and there's 16 unit apartments next door and across the street. So really what I'm interested in is a rezoning for 10 townhome units. That would be this concept plan. It's 5 and 5 with this proposal has there's a 30-foot setback from the street instead of the 50-foot. So with any rezoning that would potentially happen, I would also be requesting a variance on the setback. So like I said, the next door unit's 16 units on a little bit smaller of a parcel. I think it's just over half an acre. This one's 0.62 of an acre. And really the kind of selling point is, one, it represents, it's infill. It's not taking existing field or farm and trying to redevelop it into something that's really odd for the area. I think it would fit into the street very well. I think it fits in with the comprehensive plan and the framework plan. It's the price point of these units would be on the higher end of rentals in the city, and it'd be geared towards young professionals that are either, went away to college and are coming back to town or moving in to work at Intel or a company of that nature. I think it's a low impact as far as traffic goes. I don't think it will be a high impact on schools. As far as traffic, there's not a ton of traffic already on Oak Meadow, and there's a stoplight right there, kind of just dead ends into the park. And being 10 units, it's not like I'm dumping out 100 cars onto the street. And it would be a huge increase in taxes for the city from what's being paid now on an empty parcel to something that we're going to estimate is around probably a $2.5 to $3 million valuation. That's the general idea. I could talk a little bit about the setback, I guess. If there are any questions so far or comments?
You want to cover both?
Yeah, I can cover both. Oh, let me back up. I jumped the gun on a couple of things.
Okay.
What I'm asking, I'm looking to get feedback, essentially. I'm in contract on this property. And before I buy it, if I buy it, I wanted to come talk to the city, the zoning board, see if this is something that you guys would like, the city would like, if it fits in with what's going on. I don't know if I'm in a situation where you already approved townhomes and people will come in screaming if we do any more. Just kind of looking to get a feel for that before going too far along with this project or others like it. That's the whole purpose of me being here is trying to just get a feel for everything. The setback too, it's there's a 50-foot required by code. These plans are at a 30-foot. It does a few different things. One, I think it's beneficial kind of to Oak Meadow as a thoroughfare. It brings things forward, sort of activates the street, engages people a little more. There'll be stoops and patios out on this side. People will be closer to the street, wave at them as you go by. Actually kind of reduces speeding when you have buildings a little closer to the street. Old city planning folklore. I think it does. That's what they teach in class anyway. Jack, any thoughts on that?
Not incorrect.
Not every, yeah. So it's usually true. People still might speed, but usually bringing things forward a little bit gets it a little more walkable feel, and people kind of slow down and look a little bit. The benefits to the build is that I would have more parking space, and this is a potential configuration of the same parcel. It's easier to park and easier to drive between the buildings and the parking spaces. And here, if we were at 50 feet, the space between the two rows of townhomes would be really kind of tight. This opens that up a little bit. And I think it makes screening a little better. When it's a little closer to the road, you have some fences and trees that look really nice. It'll be a nice massing. You'll be able to see it from Broad Street as you're going down at that stoplight at Oak Meadow and Broad. Yeah, that's sort of the idea. I don't know if anybody's familiar with the duplex right behind McDonald's that the Beesons owned. My dad and I just bought that and are doing the remodel, putting on new roof line, covered ports, wood facade, but we don't really like the vinyl material, so it'll be same kind of real high quality finish. And yeah, that's the idea.
All right, I'll start with a couple of questions, and then we'll just open it up or comments and questions. Parking, I know for 10 units, you've got the minimum number of parking there, spaces, 2 per unit. And you've only got 2 spaces beyond that. And that seems kind of tight. I mean, if you got 10 residential units there, that you're limiting it to 2 visitors at a time?
2 visitors in this plan, yeah. We want to look to see if there's a better way to do some visitor spots. But yeah, the parking in this plan is 2 per unit with a 2-car garage, and then 2 visitor spots as it is. The other plan has, it's still going to be some garages and then more visitor spots.
It still totals to 22.
It's still tight, yeah. Yeah, there wasn't, it's just with the regulations, it's a little tight, parking is, yeah.
Yeah, well, you could reduce the number of units.
Could reduce the unit, yeah. Yeah, could reduce a unit.
That was my question as well, is, two guest parking spots in this, in the concept 1, it just doesn't seem like enough. It's, somebody has a party, where are they gonna park all the cars? They're gonna park them on the street?
Well, there's no street parking there.
Yeah, right.
They'd have to
They're gonna
go
pull
over in
up
the
in
parking
grass.
lot or
Yeah.
go in the parking lot across.
I just think that's something we really need to consider and try to work out somehow. I mean, I like the idea of the fronts of the units at the street, and then you have kind of an alleyway to access the garage. It's kind of a nice concept, and that one, I think, has a lot of appeal, but you need to figure out what you're gonna do is find some additional guest parking.
Okay.
And are there limitations on the, well, particularly in the back on plan number 2, on the west property line? Because you show the parking spaces being right up against the property line and the setback, and what are the restrictions on parking in the setback? Are there, I can't remember now.
I don't think there's restrictions.
They would have to be buffered. for
Well,
sure.
yeah, buffer, but they can put parking in the setback all the way out up to the buffer? Is that not
I
an
guess
issue?
it would be dependent upon, because if we're doing multifamily, you can go to the multifamily zoning district,
Yeah.
and those would apply, or you can do a plan district, and then that can be negotiated. So
Right.
it's tough to say, because it's dependent upon which path.
So what is this zone right now?
General business, I believe.
And they would need either an L3 or an L4 buffering on the west side.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct,
So-
because arguably without that buffer, there's houses on the other side, so everybody pulls in, you're in the kitchen, you're gonna get a lot of headlights coming in, so that would need to be appropriately buffered.
Yeah. I think your plan's a little aggressive for the space you've used there. I know the area well, I actually drive by there every day to my home. They're already setback concerns. You're talking about asking for a variance to 30 feet. There's already no sidewalk. We see people walking with strollers on the side of the road right now. I think I'm just being, transparent. I think you're asking for a lot out of the little partial that you have with what you're asking. If you want to make it happen, I concur. I think you need to reduce unit size. You're going to have people parking in the parking lot of Washington's across the street there, along right where that gas tank is and kind of that little side thing there. Visitors are going to end up parking there and crossing the street.
Yeah, we might be able to, I'm sure we can move something around to add more parking. As far as, or reduce size or a unit, it is less, there's less than units here than on both sides of it, across the street and beside it. Those are ones are, I think before zoning codes came in, but they, like I said, the directly to the north there's 16 units on a smaller lot.
I agree. I don't think this is a traffic issue. I think it's a parking and safety issue.
One thing you gotta remember is people fill garages up. And then they're
Right,
gonna park
right.
their cars.
Yeah.
So I understand if it's a 2-car garage or whatever, but people have a tendency to fill it up, and then where's that other person gonna park?
Sure.
So it's something to keep in mind. I would just caution you I understand the purpose and the business mind of putting as many units as you can. I would just caution you, don't get too greedy, because it will be a hard fight for you to, get anything accomplished. So just take a good look
Oh,
at it
absolutely. Yes, sir.
and come up with a plan that makes sense. Because we all know what happens when it gets overcrowded and people are going, then all of a sudden we got the police have to get involved because there's cars parking over in the parking lot. You're going to get calls all the time, and you don't want that. The other thing is, I know there's a concrete entrance barrier type going into Oak Meadow. Is this before it or is this after it? I know there's like those, they've been there.
I'm trying to think.
Is
what-
this Doc Sikowski's old property, or is it the old Doc, or is this a little farther north
It's
of it?
just past, so once you turn in, you're past the Duke, past the Dollar General, childcare, this unit.
Okay, so it's before that concrete, the concrete.
I'm trying to think of where the concrete barrier.
They're very obsolete or, weird looking, but they're just like little white wall that's just kind of there, probably about 15 feet long.
And we're gonna drive by it after we leave.
Right.
Yeah.
It's directly across the.
No, it's when you're going up Oak Meadow. I mean, believe it or not, there was like an entrance to go into Oak Meadow when there was
Okay.
nothing there back in the day. That
Okay.
was very noticeable, and now it's just kind of like not seen. So I'm just trying to figure out, are you before it or after?
It's right, if you were going to like Washington's Hardware,
Mm-hmm.
if you walked out of Washington's Hardware and looked to the right, it's right there.
That's the hardware store.
Yeah, it's
Right,
across the street.
right.
So it's directly across from the service behind their
Yeah, and
building.
I think there's, again, when it was originally done, that was the housing development, and then
Oh, okay.
businesses would
Like
come
an
out.
entrance
Would
sign.
come entrance, and then businesses would come out. Just throwing you back to the 70s.
Okay.
And that, but 'cause I had a lot of friends that lived back there back in the day. Yeah, that's my thing. Just
Okay.
take a look at it. It's nice to have something, and appreciate you bringing it. And they look nice. You're cramming a lot in there, my friend.
Are you planning, are these with basements or on a slab?
On slabs.
Okay.
Unless basements would help sell them, then basements. Real flexible, it's real early on in the process.
Put underground parking in, maybe that'll
Yeah.
solve the
Good
problem.
deal. Get them underground parking.
Or underneath.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. Raises the price a little bit, but
Absolutely.
And
Get
then
a
pray
premium.
for not the 50-year storm.
Right.
I love that you're wanting to do something with it. Just, I don't want to see people parking on the streets and then the people who are walking from that neighborhood to Dollar General to McDonald's are now even walking even more onto the street. I think you're just setting,
So if I interject, it is in the transportation corridor overlay district, so they would have to go through that process, which does require them to install sidewalk.
So it actually will add some space for sidewalks.
are they gonna be able to accomplish that with a 30-foot setback?
I would
That's,
think so.
I think so, 5, 6 feet wide for a sidewalk.
Yeah, city sidewalks, 4 feet wide.
We could do a nice sidewalk. It would, I think, add to the project. I think it'd be nice.
it's a nice concept, just take a look at it.
So, okay. I will.
As you work through this, be sure, particularly with the residential on the back, on the west side, it's, you know, if you're talking about a 3-story building, like in your plan number 1, be aware that, you know, people on the west side of that subdivision will probably be unhappy with it. So you want to be open with communication during your process. Don't just drop it in the end and say, oh, here, this is done.
Right.
Okay.
Makes sense. Is it something, if I worked out the parking out of the sidewalk, you think this is something the city would, if I work out a couple of these issues, would approve?
You'd have to see it.
Yeah, we can't make any.
I know,
commitments
we
on it.
can't make promises on that.
No, I
You have
know, I'm
to
not
see
asking
it.
for, anything in
I think
writing.
we've
or
given you
anything.
what we can give you to
Yeah,
try to make your decision.
Also keep in mind the sewer capacity
sure.
that we just talked about.
Yeah.
That's- Anything, Frank?
No, I think you guys hit the things there. I was gonna mention sewer capacity. That would take a chunk out of it. Yeah, and then just the density in there. I think there's kind of a lot of things in regulation wise. I'd like to see how that kind of plays out once we have right bufferings and, we're within code, which I get it's a chicken and the egg thing here. But yeah, the parking is definitely a concern. And so I think that's some work to work out there. It would be nice to have sidewalks there, and I like the idea of the infill. So it's got some promise, but also some challenges.
Sure.
I think you can work through them.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you,
This,
sir.
this is probably the first application I've seen with the proposal for a bocce ball.
Yeah, right.
Right, yeah, we
That's
had,
creative.
yeah, we had different ideas for it, and because of the requirement of some green space,
Right.
and the architect's actually oddly enough into bocce ball. And thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate it, thank you.
You can't get your satellite to kick up.
All right, next on the agenda, number 7, excuse of absence for Mr. Truax. Any concerns? I'll make a motion that we excuse Jerry's absence from the September 4th, 2024 meeting.
I second it.
Thank you. Any discussion? We won't pin you down. All right, roll call.
Mr. Mancino,
Yes.
Mr. Boggs,
Yes,
Mr. Bush,
Yes,
Mr. Brewery,
Yes.
Mr. Truax.
Thank you.
motion passes. Okay, next on the item, next item on the agenda, approval of the meeting minutes for the September 4th, 2024 meeting. Everybody had a chance to review the minutes, and are there any additions or corrections? No? Hearing none, and I'll move that the minutes of the September 4th, 2024 regular meeting be approved as presented. For a second.
Second?
Thank you. Discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Bush,
yes.
Mr. Truax,
Yes.
Mr. Mancino,
Yes.
Mr. Boggs,
Yes,
Mr. Brewery.
Yes.
motion passes. Anything else tonight?
Oh, sir.
Will?
I'll make a motion that we adjourn to Wednesday, November 6th, 2024.
You have a second?
Second?
Thank you, Frank. Roll call.
Mr. Truax,
Yes.
Mr. Bush,
Yes.
Mr. Boggs,
Yes,
Mr. Mancino,
Yes.
Mr. Brewery.
Yes.
motion passes. We're adjourned.